They came from the stars with a warning, or maybe a threat. It was never really clear. All anyone knew was that when the invaders landed on Earth, they weren't here to negotiate. They weren't here to coexist. They were here to claim, to conquer, and to erase everything in their way. Whole cities were burned, cultures wiped out, and millions vanished in the blink of an eye. It wasn't just a war. It was a genocide unlike anything humanity had ever faced. For years, the people of Earth watched their world crumble. Governments fell, armies were overwhelmed, and hope became a rare commodity. The alien invaders, with their advanced technology and ruthless tactics, seemed unstoppable. They demanded total submission or complete extinction. The message was clear. You wanted monsters? We'll become them. But beneath the rubble of despair, something else was growing. A fire. A determination that maybe, just maybe, Earth wasn't ready to surrender. That maybe, in the face of genocide, humanity would find a way not just to survive, but to fight back in a way that the universe would never forget. This isn't a story about superheroes or perfect heroes. It's a story about ordinary people forced to become monsters. Not because they wanted to, but because it was the only way to protect what was left of their home. It's a story about the price of survival, the cost of vengeance, and the darkness that can grow when you're pushed beyond every limit. The world changed overnight. Cities once full of life became ghost towns, silent except for the echoes of memories and the occasional distant roar of alien patrols. The skies, once blue and welcoming, were now a constant battlefield, streaked with fire and the cold shine of foreign weapons. People whispered stories of the invaders' cruelty, entire families disappearing, children taken as experiments, entire ecosystems being wiped out just to make way for alien machines. At first, the governments tried to negotiate, to find some way to coexist, but peace talks were a lie. A stall tactic as the invaders tightened their grip. Resistance groups popped up, but they were quickly crushed. The truth was brutal. The invaders didn't see humanity as equals. To them, Earth was just another resource to harvest, another species to eradicate. And so the survivors were left with a terrible choice, either accept their fate or fight back by any means necessary. That's when the transformation began. No longer bound by old morals or traditions, people started to push their bodies and minds beyond human limits. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, even civilians all began adapting. They modified themselves with whatever technology and knowledge they could scavenge, becoming stronger, faster, smarter, and yes, more monstrous. There was no turning back. The same hands that once built homes and cared for loved ones were now reshaping themselves into weapons. Flesh merged with metal, instincts sharpened into cold precision, and compassion hardened into ruthless resolve. Earth's answer to genocide wasn't just resistance, it was evolution in its most terrifying form. One group of survivors became infamous. They weren't soldiers nor scientists, but something in between. They called themselves the Echoes, because like echoes in a canyon, they carried the voices and memories of the lost, returning again and again with fury and vengeance. Each member was a living weapon forged from desperation and loss. Their faces were rarely seen, hidden behind masks of twisted metal and glowing eyes that reflected the rage burning inside. Among the Echoes was a figure who had once been a teacher, a simple person who loved stories and children's laughter. Now, that person was a monster of war, feared by the invaders and whispered about in human hideouts. Their transformation was painful, both physically and emotionally, but it was necessary. They were the symbol of Earth's defiance, the living proof that humanity would not die quietly. Yet, even as the Echoes fought and pushed back the alien forces, they knew the battle was far from over. The invaders had resources and technology beyond anything Earth could imagine. They had patience and cruelty in equal measure. Every victory was hard-won and came with a cost. Every monster made in humanity's image risked losing what little remained of their own soul. What the invaders didn't realize was that, in trying to break humanity's spirit, they awakened something much older and darker. The monsters they created were not just fighters, they were reminders of a truth the universe often forgets, that when pushed to the brink, The oppressed can become the most terrifying force of all, and now, as the night falls over a shattered city, the echo of a distant roar shakes the empty streets. The survivors hold their breath, waiting. Somewhere in the shadows, the next battle is about to begin. Will humanity's monsters be the saviors they need, or will they become the very nightmare they sought to destroy? The answer lies just beyond the horizon. But one thing is certain. This war will change Earth forever, and no one will come out unscarred. They say before the sky turned red, before the cities burned and the oceans boiled in places no one visits anymore, people still believed someone would save them. Maybe it would be a last-minute miracle, some secret Earth weapon, or maybe allies from the stars who had been watching all along. But when the first decade of silence passed, and the only things that came from the sky were more drones, more ships, and more death, even the most hopeful stopped waiting. That's when people began to change. Not just physically, but deep down, where words don't reach. The invaders didn't speak our language. They didn't even try. Communication wasn't necessary when the goal was extermination. They never explained why they chose Earth. Some thought we were just unlucky. Others believed there was something here they needed. Not resources, but maybe something deeper. Some kind of fear. Fear of what humanity might become if pushed hard enough. No one really knows how it started, but the transformation. Maybe it began in the underground labs scattered across broken cities. Or maybe it started in someone's garage with stolen tech, metal scraps, and a refusal to die quietly. But it spread. Quietly at first. Whispered rumors of people coming back from impossible injuries. Of eyes that glowed in the dark. Of movements too fast, too precise to be natural. Not everyone agreed with it. Many believed turning into something else meant we'd already lost. That becoming monsters was exactly what the invaders wanted. Proof that humanity could be broken. But others saw it differently. They believed survival was never about staying pure. It was about adapting, becoming what the moment demanded, even if it meant stepping into the dark. One of the earliest transformed was a woman who had once worked in a solar farm out west. She'd lost her family during the first wave, when a gravity bomb turned her entire valley into molten glass. She was found weeks later by a scavenger team, skin burned, bones shattered, but alive, barely. They should have let her die. That's what some said. But instead, they took her to an old medical station, patched together with alien tech and human desperation. No one expected her to wake up. When she did, she wasn't the same. She didn't speak for a long time. Just stared with those new eyes, metallic, dimly glowing, always scanning. Her body moved differently, like every step was calculated. She didn't eat much, didn't sleep, but when the invaders found that outpost weeks later, she tore through them like wildfire. No training, no plan, just rage, precision, and something no one could quite explain. After that, the resistance began to listen. If survival meant changing, then so be it. People started disappearing for days, weeks, coming back different. Some didn't come back at all. Not everyone could handle the process. Whatever was being done, whatever tech was fusing with flesh, it didn't take kindly to weakness. The invaders noticed the shift. Their patrols grew more aggressive. Their machines began scanning deeper, searching for those who had changed. They saw what we were becoming, and it scared them, but not enough to stop. Not yet. There were rumors, always rumors, about something big. Something buried beneath the earth, maybe even older than the war itself. Some said it was a ship. Others believed it was a weapon or a prison. The invaders had been digging for years in the dead zones, carving out entire mountains, draining lakes. They were searching for something. No one knew what. But the echoes believed it was the reason for everything. The real reason Earth was chosen. Not because of who we were, but because of what we were standing on. The leader of the echoes, if you could call them that, didn't talk much. They had no name, only scars and a voice like crushed stone. No one knew what they looked like under the armor. Some thought they weren't fully human anymore. Others believed they'd given up their name to carry the weight of everyone else's. They moved through the wreckage of cities like a shadow, always where the fight was worst, always one step ahead of death. People followed them not out of loyalty, but because when they fought, they made others believe survival was still possible. One night, in a place once known as Kyoto, a team of echoes intercepted a transmission. It was short, broken, but what came through was chilling. Containment breach. Failed to secure. It's awake. The message wasn't from humans. It was in the invader's tongue, decoded by someone who had spent years listening to them, studying their language in secret. The transmission wasn't meant to be heard by us, and it wasn't about us either. The echoes didn't say much about what it meant, only that the invaders had been hiding something, and now they'd lost control of it. Whatever it was, it terrified them. That, more than anything, got people's attention. Because if something could scare the invaders, then maybe there was a chance. Or maybe the nightmare was even bigger than we thought. Since then, strange things have started happening in the wastelands. Lights in the sky that don't match any ship. Entire patrol squads disappearing without a trace. And the dreams. People waking up screaming about voices underground, about something ancient calling to them in a language they shouldn't understand. The resistance is divided. Some want to find whatever the invaders woke up. Use it. Others say it's a trap, or worse, something that should have stayed buried. But curiosity is hard to kill, even in a dying world. Now, the echoes are moving again, quietly, quickly. They're heading toward one of the deep zones, a place where the ground still glows from orbital strikes. They're not saying why, but everyone knows something is about to happen. In the silence before another storm, people are holding their breath, watching, waiting. Because Earth's monsters, the ones we made from pain and loss, are about to uncover something that might change the course of the war, or end everything. And somewhere out there, beneath layers of ash and forgotten stone, something ancient stirs, watching, listening. The heat in the air wasn't natural. It pulsed, slow and steady, like something deep beneath the earth was breathing. The echoes moved in silence, 5 shadows slipping between collapsed towers and scorched ground. Each one was different, built from different bodies, different pasts, but they moved with the same purpose. They were heading toward what had once been a major data center before the sky fell. Now it was just another dead zone, crawling with radiation, ash, and the strange signals that had started pulsing weeks ago. The invaders had abandoned the area suddenly. No resistance, no traps, just a wide, empty circle of nothing. And that was what worried the echoes most. The invaders never left anything untouched unless they were afraid of it. One of the echoes, the youngest, paused beside the remains of a burned-out car, her mask scanning the ground. Soil's cracked, surface temps rising, something's shifting under us. The leader didn't respond, just kept walking. The others followed. The silence between them wasn't awkward, it was earned. Too many missions, too much loss. Words didn't carry much weight anymore. Not far from there, deep in an old bunker wired together with stolen alien tech, a technician stared at a glitching screen. She hadn't slept in 2 days. Static danced across her monitors, but now and then, the signal cleared just enough to show something, a pulse, repeating at regular intervals. Not a pattern exactly, but not random either. She leaned closer, her heart pounded in her ears. "It's not a weapon," she whispered to herself. "It's a call." The others in the bunker didn't believe her. They thought the signal was another trap, a lure to pull resistance fighters into the open. But she knew better. She'd been tracking the invaders' communications since the first wave, and this wasn't theirs. It wasn't human either. It was older. And whatever was sending it, it was waking up. Across what used to be the European continent, a different kind of battle was unfolding. A group of unmodified humans, survivors, scavengers, some still clinging to the old world, had taken up shelter inside a ruined cathedral. They didn't trust the echoes, thought the transformations were unnatural. They called them ghosts and said they'd already lost their humanity. But fear was hard to hold on to when death hovered so close. One of their scouts had returned that morning, his face pale, his breath short. "There's movement near the ridge," he said, voice shaking. Not alien. Not human either. No one spoke. The cathedral's great windows, once filled with colored glass, now framed a sky that never stopped burning. Meanwhile, above Earth, aboard a cloaked orbital platform abandoned during the war's early years, an old satellite began broadcasting again. It had been silent for nearly a decade, believed destroyed in one of the first strikes. But now, its ancient circuits flickered back to life. A single word flashed on its internal logs, repeating over and over. Origin. Inside the Echo's main base, a mobile fortress crawling through the wasteland on massive treads, a heated argument echoed down steel corridors. A former general, once a respected voice in Earth's failed defense, slammed a metal fist onto the table. If you push forward, if you dig any deeper into that signal, you're risking the last of us. Opposite him, one of the Echoes stood calmly, arms folded. Her skin was pale with circuitry just beneath the surface. Her eyes glowed faintly, but her voice was steady. And if we don't, we die anyway. There are still people out there, he shouted. Real people. They don't want this war to go any deeper. They just want it to end, she leaned in. Then they should have fought harder when it started. The tension crackled between them. Both knew the truth. Earth was at a breaking point. They couldn't hold out much longer. Supplies were running thin. Morale was worse, and more people were vanishing into the zones where the signal pulsed strongest. Not just soldiers, civilians too, drawn to it, like it was calling them by name. Back in the ruins, the Echo team reached what remained of the data center. It was buried in a crater now, half the building sunk into the ground. Strange, spiked growths lined the outer shell. Not plant, not metal. Something in between. Alive, maybe. They didn't touch them. Inside, the air was heavier, hotter. Lights flickered where there shouldn't have been power. The youngest Echo stepped ahead, her scanner glowing bright. There's something here. Beneath the server core. Something huge. The leader crouched, placing a hand to the floor. Beneath the metal, something pulsed, slow and deep. A rhythm, like a heartbeat. They followed it down, through corridors that hadn't seen life in years, past rusted signs and cracked glass, until they reached a vault door, melted in half, as if something had pushed its way out. What they found behind it wasn't a weapon, not in the way they understood. It was a chamber, circular, with walls covered in symbols, not human, not alien either, older, deeper. Floating in the center of the room was a figure, tall, thin, and surrounded by light. Not alive, but not dead. Its eyes were closed. Its body was encased in a material that shimmered between liquid and glass. The youngest stepped forward, drawn without understanding why. Don't touch it, the leader warned. I think it's dreaming, she whispered. Behind them, static roared through the comms channel. The technician's voice cut in, full of panic. They've found you. A full scout fleet is moving in. Whatever you've uncovered, they're scared of it. You need to move. Now. But none of the Echoes moved. Not yet. Because in that moment, the floating figure's eyes opened, not with light, but with memory. And every Echo in the room felt it like a strike to the chest. Flashes, a burning sky, a war older than Earth, another species, long gone, who had once faced extinction, and become something more, something monstrous, something the invaders never forgot. The leader staggered back, gripping the wall. It's not just a weapon, it's a warning. And then behind them, the corridor filled with distant noise. Not the hum of machines, but footsteps. Dozens of them. The invaders had arrived, faster than expected, more than expected. The youngest turned, her voice hollow. We're not alone anymore. The chamber's lights dimmed as the ground trembled once more. The figure in the center smiled. Just barely, and somewhere deep beneath the planet's crust, something else began to move. The air inside the chamber felt like it was collapsing in on itself. Not from pressure, but from something stranger, a presence that couldn't be measured. The floating figure in the center of the room didn't move, but its opened eyes locked on each of the echoes one by one. In that silence, none of them could speak. Thoughts flickered, memories surfaced, and something deep in their minds felt seen. Above them, the facility shook. Dust and broken metal rained from the ceiling. The sounds of the approaching invaders were no longer distant. They were here. Heavy boots on steel, synthetic voices echoing commands in a language that cut through the walls like a knife. This wasn't just a scout unit. It was a containment force. "They're not coming to fight," the youngest echo said, voice trembling. "They're coming to seal this place, permanently." The leader stepped forward, eyes still locked on the figure. "They're afraid it'll wake up fully. That will connect with it. That will remember." The technician's voice crackled over the comms again, panicked and distorted. "You have to leave now. They're deploying suppressors. If they activate that field, nothing gets in or out, including you." But the leader didn't respond. Instead, he stepped into the chamber's center, closer to the floating form. It didn't resist, didn't react, but the pulse in the floor quickened, steady and sharp, a rhythm that matched the pounding of the invaders closing in. The rest of the echoes took defensive positions, weapons drawn. One of them, older, half of his body grafted with scavenged alien plating, watched the entrance with cold focus. 10 seconds. Maybe less, he muttered. Outside the ruins, a sleek black carrier hovered silently above the crater, its surface rippling like oil. Dozens of invader soldiers poured out, moving in perfect formation. Their weapons were alive. Not metal, but something that moved with a will of its own. They didn't shout. They didn't hesitate. This wasn't a battle. It was a burial. Back inside, the leader reached out and placed his hand on the edge of the containment field around the figure. His skin sparked against the surface, but it didn't burn. Instead, a surge of images flashed through him. Not words, but sensations. Heat, cold, fear, triumph, death, life. And behind it all, the steady pulse of something ancient and unfinished. "It's a memory vault," he whispered. "Not a weapon. A record," but the youngest shook her head. "No, it's more. It's alive. It's watching us, waiting for us to choose." The echoes exchanged a look, one of those silent conversations they were used to. The choice was clear: leave now and survive, or stay and risk everything for something they didn't fully understand. Above ground, the first wave of suppressor units dropped into place. They began deploying their field generators, long, spindly legs drilling into the rock. The hum grew louder. A dome of shimmering energy began to form in the sky, slowly descending. The technician's voice returned, frantic. "Once the dome closes, nothing gets out. Not even light." That's what they used on the first colonies they wiped out. No witnesses, no signals, just silence. Still, the leader didn't move. In a broken city half a world away, the resistance picked up the signal. A low, repeating pulse that began interfering with everything: radios, power cells, even implanted tech. The signal was spreading, carried like a heartbeat across the ruined surface of Earth. The survivors didn't know what it meant, but they felt it. Some dropped to their knees. Others cried. A few began walking without knowing why toward the dead zones. Something was calling. Inside the chamber, the figure's lips began to move, barely. No sound came out, but the echoes felt the message. Not words, warnings. Flashes of what the invaders had done to other worlds, what they'd tried to contain, what they failed to kill. "It's not just Earth," the older echo said, watching the hallway. "They've done this before, over and over. Cleaned out anything that reminded them of us." The leader clenched his jaw. "Because we're not the first. Just the first to answer back." The floating figure raised a single hand, and the walls began to shake. The containment systems, ancient and cracked, started failing. The glow around the figure intensified. The pulses became louder, audible now like a deep drumbeat from beneath the Earth itself. The invaders had arrived just in time to see everything slip out of their control. Shots rang out in the upper levels. Echoes returned fire. It was chaos, fast and brutal. 2 were lost in seconds. Another shouted for cover as alien projectiles tore through the walls like paper. Still, the leader stayed with the figure, his hand pressed to the field. "We're out of time!" the youngest cried. Then something in the figure's chest lit up. A small core, swirling with a deep violet glow. It pulsed once, and in that moment the invading soldiers froze mid-step. Not dead, not disabled, just paused. Like puppets with the string suddenly cut. "What the hell is this?" the older echo whispered. And then it happened. A tremor rolled through the earth, deep, long, not an explosion. Not a weapon, something older. A shifting, a stirring. Like something buried miles beneath the crust had finally begun to move. The invaders panicked. Their command ships tried to retreat. But something grabbed hold of their systems, shut them down. One by one, the skies began to clear. The ships didn't fall, they just vanished. Across every dead zone, the signal increased. Survivors felt it in their bones. Those who had been modified, like the echoes, began to hear voices, whispers layered beneath the pulse. Instructions, warnings, memories. It was then that the technician realized the truth. The signal wasn't a weapon or even a call. It was a test, and Earth had just passed. Back in the chamber, the floating figure turned to look at the leader fully, and this time, it spoke. Not in language, not in sound, but in thought. "You are ready." And then the chamber lit up with impossible light. The walls cracked open, revealing more chambers beyond, filled with more figures. More memory, more fire. The invaders tried to activate the suppressor dome. Too late. The pulse broke through. The battle was no longer about Earth. It had never been. This was something else. A cycle older than time. One the invaders had tried to bury again and again. But now, something they feared more than extinction had risen. The memory of resistance. The shape of vengeance. The face of humanity. No longer afraid, and just as the echoes prepared for whatever came next, the light cut out. Silence fell, and the world held its breath. Silence. Total, crushing silence. For one long moment, it felt like time had frozen. The chamber's walls had stopped pulsing. The light from the core faded, flickering out like a dying star. Even the rumble in the ground was gone. The invaders' ships, once towering shadows over Earth's surface, had disappeared without a trace. No fire, no wreckage, just absence. The echoes stood in the dark, breath held, waiting for whatever came next. But nothing moved. Not the figure in the chamber, not the invaders, not even the air. The youngest echo took a cautious step forward, weapon low. Did it work?" No one answered. Even the comms had gone quiet, not jammed, not broken, just empty, like everything else. The leader finally stepped back from the figure, his armor humming faintly as internal systems reactivated. "Something's changed, but I don't think it's over." He looked around the chamber, taking in the still glowing edges of the wall, the symbols, once static, now shifting slowly like they were alive. "We triggered something. But it's not what they were trying to stop. It's worse." Then the temperature dropped. Frost began to creep across the metal floor. Breath turned visible. The kind of cold that didn't feel natural, not a weather shift, not environmental. Something else. A presence. And with it came a low hum from deep underground. The same rhythm as before, but twisted, offbeat, wrong. The technician, still monitoring the site from her bunker miles away, leaned over her console, eyes wide. "That's not the original signal. Something else is broadcasting now. Same frequency, different pattern, inverted pulse structure. It's not coming from the chamber anymore. It's coming from beneath it." She zoomed in on the map overlay, isolating the signal. It was spreading faster than the first, tearing through the planet's surface like it had always been waiting. Systems began failing one by one. Satellites, drones, all communication relays. One line remained open, a single channel. And then an unexpected voice came through. It wasn't alien. It was human, garbled, barely audible, but definitely Earthborn. "This is Site Theta. If anyone's receiving this, do not activate the secondary vault. It's not containment. It's a prison. They buried it for a reason. The technician froze. Site Theta? That was destroyed during the second wave, or so they had thought. Back in the chamber, the leader turned toward the far wall, where the pulse was strongest now. Not from the floating figure, but from beyond the structure. Below, a previously sealed path had cracked open, narrow but deep. Blackness spilled out like smoke. "We've been looking in the wrong place," he said. This chamber wasn't holding the threat. It was guarding the gate. The older Echo tightened his grip on his weapon. "Then why wake it up?" The leader's voice was low. "Because we thought we were the only ones being hunted." That was the second twist. The truth no one had expected. The invaders weren't just here to erase humanity. They were trying to stop something else. Something that was already on Earth, buried long before the first human ever stood upright. And when the Echoes had activated the figure in the chamber, they hadn't just awakened memory. They'd weakened the lock. The light flickered again. The floating figure, still motionless, seemed to dim. Not like it was dying. More like it was withdrawing, hiding. Its voice echoed once more, faint and cold this time. "We are not the first. You are not the last." And then it vanished. No flare, no sound. Just gone. The youngest Echo backed away, panic starting to rise. This isn't what we were fighting for, but none of them could leave now. The path below was open. The signal was active. And whatever was coming, it wasn't from above. Miles away, in the Resistance's stronghold, alarms were already sounding. People gathered in the ruined city center, staring at the horizon as a new shape rose. Not a ship, not a weapon, a structure. Massive, dark, slowly pushing up through the earth like a tower of bone and metal. No one had built it. No one had ever seen it before. But somehow, everyone recognized it the moment it appeared. It didn't belong to the invaders. It didn't belong to Earth. It belonged to something else. The technician watched the live feed go static, then stared at the final signal packet before the blackout, a series of repeating glyphs that matched none of the known alien languages. But one of them matched something found in the old chamber's walls. She whispered, mostly to herself, "It's not a war. It's a cycle." The conflict they thought they were fighting, Earth against the invaders, wasn't the real war. That was only one layer. The deeper fight was something older, something cosmic. The invaders had come not as conquerors, but as jailers. Cruel, yes, ruthless, but not without purpose. They were terrified not of humanity's strength, but of its proximity to whatever was sealed here. Back in the depths of the crater, the Echoes moved down the newly opened path. They didn't speak. The deeper they went, the less their tech worked. HUDs flickered. Armor lost calibration. Even thought began to feel heavy, like something in the dark was pressing down on their minds. And in that descent, the final realization began to dawn. The transformation humanity had begun. The merging of flesh and metal, instinct and data, wasn't just survival. It was preparation. Someone, or something, had known this would happen. Had shaped human evolution not as a reaction, but as a response. The changes weren't random. The modifications weren't just desperate. They were a key, a design, a trigger. At the base of the path, they reached a vast underground chamber, so massive it stretched beyond vision. Strange structures jutted from the floor and ceiling, humming with energy no one could explain. In the center, a single shape hovered, not like the figure above, but larger. Covered in layers of machinery fused to ancient armor, it looked almost human. But not. The leader stepped forward, his voice barely more than a breath. "That's not one of theirs." The shape moved, not with grace, not like a being waking up. It shuddered, twitched, like something relearning how to exist, and when it finally spoke, it was not with memory, but with hunger. "Unseal me." Every system in the Echo's suit spiked. Sensors screamed. Lights burned out. Behind them, the passage sealed. No way out. Above them, on the surface, the sky began to crack. Not physically, but in a way that made people drop to their knees, clutching their heads. Hearing things that weren't sounds. It was beginning, but not the end of the war. The end of the illusion. because Earth hadn't just been a target. In time, the echoes began sharing everything, the history they uncovered, the truth behind the invaders, and the warnings that came with it. Humanity had never been weak. It had simply never been ready. Now they had a choice, not just to rebuild, but to evolve, not through tech alone, but through purpose, through unity, through understanding the mistakes of the past. The youngest echo became the first of a new kind of voice. Not a soldier, not a fighter, but a guide. Her experience in the chamber had given her more than knowledge. It had connected her to the memory vaults across the planet. She could feel things others couldn't, read energy patterns, sense danger before it arrived. Some feared her at first. Others worshipped her. But she always kept the same message. We are not monsters. We are what comes after them, and yet the presence on the moon lingered. One night, months after the towers fell and the invaders were gone, she stood alone on the highest ridge of the new outpost, staring at the moon. Its surface was still, silent, but she could feel something behind it. Not hostile, not yet, just aware, watching. The leader joined her, standing beside her in silence. "Do you think it'll come?" she asked. "It already has," he said. "It just hasn't decided what form to take." She nodded slowly, eyes locked on the stars. "Then we wait. And if it comes through, we answer." The resistance had grown into something else now. Not an army, not a government, but a memory that walked and breathed. Humanity wasn't what it had been. It would never go back to the old world, not after what they had seen, what they had become. And that was the point. The story hadn't ended, but it wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about what came after. In the years that followed, Earth changed. The scars of war remained, but they didn't define the future. New cities were built around the old ruins, not erasing them, but honoring what had been lost. The echoes became legends, not because they were stronger or faster, but because they made a choice no one else could. They chose not to become the monsters they were expected to be, and because of that, the monsters never returned. Some say the moon still speaks, in frequencies only a few can hear. Others believe the cycle has truly ended. But in the shadows of that final chamber, deep beneath the earth, a pulse still beats softly, like a heart waiting to wake again. But now, if it does, it will find a world ready to face it, not with fear, but with fire. And that is Earth's answer. Not a scream, not surrender, but a whisper carried through ash and stars. You wanted monsters. We became something more. Human, still standing and never forgotten.